Welcome to the Brand and Market Podcast, where branding clarity meets marketing strategy. I'm your host, Allie Haney, founder of Brand and Market, a boutique agency dedicated to helping small businesses craft intentional brands and effective marketing plans. Each week, I share practical tips and insights to help you, especially those of you in real estate-related industries, build a standout brand to attract your brand's biggest fans. Let's dive in. Hello, and welcome back to another episode of the Brand and Market Podcast. I am your host, Allie Haney, and today is a solo episode. We are going to be talking about a recent experience that I had. That was the Sand in My Boots Festival. If you will remember, a few weeks back, I did an episode all about Morgan Wallen and how he sold out this music festival using the power of his brand in less than 2 hours. And I actually also did a recent episode all about Post Malone, and Post Malone was also there at the Sand in My Boots Festival. There were 3 headliners. One was Posty, one was Brooks and Dunn, and then, of course, the finale was Morgan Wallen, the host of the music festival. So if you want to check out those episodes more about their branding, how Posty transitioned into country music, I'll link that in the show notes. And then the other one is all about how Morgan was able to sell out his festival in less than 2 hours. So both of those will be in the show notes for you to take a listen to as well. But I wanted to tell you guys a little bit more about the festival and how I came back with quite a bit of inspiration from said festival. There were just a couple of conversations that I've had over the past couple weeks, and that in conjunction with some of the speeches that the artists had at the Sand in My Boots Festival, it just led me to record this episode all about the dirtiest F word in business ownership. And don't get me wrong, I absolutely love the real F word, but that's not the F word that I am talking about now. I try not to say that on the podcast in case one of my kids listens to this when they grow up. But the dirtiest F word that I'm talking about within my own business is the word failure. I was just recently interviewed on a podcast called the Built from the Ground Up show, hosted by Gwen Tensley, where she interviews female entrepreneurs, mostly in the creative space, but she just interviews them to tell their own stories about how they overcame challenges and showed grit and tenacity, which is the name of her business, her consulting business. So some of the conversations that I've had with Gwen lately, who is also my business and sales coach, like I said, in conjunction with the experience that I had at the Sand in My Boots Music Festival, led me to be really introspective about some of the quote unquote failures. I know you can't see me, but I'm doing the air quotes that I've had in my business since the start. But first, let's talk a little bit more about the Sand in My Boots Music Festival. It was the first ever Sand in My Boots Music Festival hosted in Gulf Shores, Alabama. So it's right on the Florida-Alabama line. It was on the beach. Sand in My Boots is the name of one of Morgan Wallen's songs. He had multiple things branded throughout, inspired by his other song titles. For example, the 98 Braves Park, This Bar, which is another song title that was like one specific bar area. He had a Ferris wheel called the Spin You Around Ferris Wheel, Spin You Around, another song title. So it was really cool to see all of I didn't tell you the most exciting part. There was this one section of the festival that was called Love Somebody Lane, and Caleb and I sat there and watched multiple people get married. And I don't know if it was real or not, because she said, by the power vested in me by Sand in My Boots, you're now pronounced husband and wife. And I don't know if that was like legit or if it was not. However, right next door to it, Love Somebody is another song title, by the way. Right next door to it was a flower shop, another song title, Flower Shops, where they brides were going to get their flowers before they walked down the aisle. It was just absolutely wild. So it was really such a fun experience. Caleb and I had not been to a music festival since 2013. So almost 15 years since we had been to a music festival together. So it was a really fun experience. And we got to see some really cool artists: Bailey Zimmerman, Cameron Marlowe, Ella Langley, Riley Green, Chase Rice, T-Pain, 3 6 Mafia, Diplo. There were just 2 Chainz. I'm probably missing some, but those are the ones that I vividly remember being at the stage for. What kind of stuck with me, though, was that I heard multiple artists tell their stories on stage. And, like when they are in between finishing one song, about to introduce the next, multiple of them said, this is the song that changed my life. And there's like this one like clear turning point. Like Cameron Marlowe was like, I was sitting in my bedroom in Kannapolis, North Carolina, when I wrote the lyrics to this song. So it was really inspiring to see like that one turning point that they had in their career that they can really pinpoint to the time, like the moment that their life was about to be changed. But then I take myself and I put myself in his shoes in that bedroom in Kannapolis, North Carolina, writing what I am sure was, the 500th song. He had no idea that song was going to be the song that changed his life. And so that made me just really introspective and thinking about how that can apply to, my life and my own business. And I hope this kind of gives you some hope and encouragement as well as I go through and tell you about some of my big F word failures. But Cameron Marlowe was just one example of that. There was another artist, Bailey Zimmerman. He is a young guy and kind of had a big come up in the last couple of years, but he sang one of his new songs that was called Backup Plan. And I wanted to read the part of the lyrics of this song to you because it was really just eye-opening that like he introed this song basically like if you have a backup, if you have a plan B, you're never going to achieve plan A. And so the lyrics are, falling down ain't enough to change who you were born to be. Getting back up, that's the only backup plan you need. And to hear him like sit there and hear him say that and tell us his story about how in 2019 he was, working, I don't remember, I think he said in the oil fields maybe, but like working like a very blue collar job and not really having much experience even being in the, a singer or a songwriter or what have you. He literally just prayed to God and was like, tell me where I need to be because I cannot do this every day for the rest of my life. It was just really inspiring to hear his story and how he came to be and how like once he realized what, God's path for him was, that he didn't ever have a backup plan. Like it was only going to be plan A and that dream was going to be achieved. And I don't know who out there needs to hear that right now, but don't give up on your plan A because even if you've written 500 songs, it's going to be the 501st that's the one that's going to change your life. Bringing it back to one of my all-time favorite artists, Post Malone. He was very gracious, I've been wanting to see Post Malone live for years. That I finally got that opportunity and he was everything that I expected him to be and more on stage. Very gracious, thanked everyone after every single song. Was very inspiring. He dropped a lot of F-bombs as to be expected, but just encouraged everyone that like, even if you feel lonely, you're still loved. And then at one point, and I wish I had gotten it on video, but I was just really like living in the moment. He was basically like, don't give up on your dream. If you have a dream, go do it. So many people told him that he couldn't do what he wanted to do. And he's, again, not only done that, but done that and more. Very few artists can say that they have transitioned almost entirely from one genre to the next. And he's done it. He's done it flawlessly. And he's done it like he's monetized it well. So like he is incredible. Just overall, it was so inspiring to see so many artists who were there, encouraging people, encouraging all of those tens of thousands of people in the audience, encouraging to see them at all various stages of achieving said dream because you had some artists this was their first major festival or concert. They had never played in front of that many people before. And then there were others who were almost headliners. They weren't Posty or Brooks and Dunn or Morgan Wallen yet, but like they were on their way, like a Bailey Zimmerman. And then there was Morgan Wallen, of course. And he is at what many people would consider the height of his career, just, dropped his 4th album with 37 songs on it Friday the first day of the festival. Like Caleb and I were driving to the airport at 2 a.m. listening to his new album, preparing to like listen to his album in person, which was really cool. I mean, he was achieving his dreams too at Sand in My Boots Festival because he was hosting the festival for the first time. So it was really inspiring all around to see different levels of achievement as well as hearing the stories that goes into that achievement of those goals. Oh, one more thing that I wanted to say about that. It brings me back to like seeing the videos on social media of like Post Malone's first music video. If you've not ever seen that, then you should totally Google it and see like that compared to where he is now. And then actually like right before we left for Sand in My Boots, I saw this video that someone had posted, like, this is me listening to Morgan Wallen on a side stage at CMA Fest in the middle of the day, me and 10 other people watching him sing a cover to like Linkin Park, I think. It just goes to show like wherever you find the most resistance or the most struggle, potentially the biggest failure, usually that means that your biggest successes may be just around the next corner. They're just over that hump. So I just mean for this episode, I'm not trying to like sell you anything. I'm not trying to show you that I'm the expert in everything. I'm just trying to encourage you and say, if you're having a hard time, we've all been there. Morgan Wallen's been there, or Post Malone's been there. I've been there. You're not alone in that. So I'm going to kind of, I don't want to say air my own dirty laundry, but I'm going to tell you about a couple of my own failures. Starting back in 2020 with my photography business. That's the first major failure that I can remember within my business, because up until then I had kind of just been playing it safe. I took the clients that came to me. I shot whatever, client was willing to allow me to shoot for them. And then once I really decided that I loved photographing branding sessions for other small business owners, I started this program that I thought was going to like knock it out of the park. And that program was called Be Your Brand. Be Your Brand was a subscription-based brand photography model. So essentially what that means is we've been in the content creation, just like hustle, for a long time now. I don't know, I say we, I just mean any business owner. But at that moment in time, I was really heavily involved in the wedding world as a wedding photographer as well. And so I saw all of these wedding vendors needing personal brand photography, because in the wedding world, what is preached to you, which is very similar to, realtors and short-term rental owners, but what differentiates you from any other photographer or any other florist, any other DJ, any other baker, your skills are most likely the same or very similar. What I can produce as a photographer is very similar in terms of skill that another photographer can produce, but the things that can differentiate you is your personal brand. It's who you are as a person, your values. It could be your client experience. So those things were the things that all of us were trying to showcase online at that moment. And really still today, I believe that's still applicable, especially in the realtor space. All that to say, it was like a lot of times wedding vendors might have a professional branding session to create professional imagery. But if they did, then it was most likely just once a year. With that, a lot of times their hair would change, or something would change about their physical appearance, or something would change about their personal brand that wasn't able to be translated through updated content with outdated pictures. And so my solution to that as a photographer was to create subscription-based brand photography. So what that means is they would have the opportunity to either come to me quarterly, so once every 3 months, or they would have the opportunity to come monthly, so once a month for the next 12 months. And I would basically plan and schedule the branding session. That branding session would be over the course of the day. They would have a 1-hour time slot, and then I would be able to fill like 8 time slots with 8 different wedding vendors. And each month we would be visiting a different wedding venue in the area. We were in Northern Virginia at the time. And so I was scheduling those sessions from January to December to be able to see how many slots that I could fill for that subscription-based model. And that way they could come, and see me once a month or once every 3 months to be able to have updated branding photos. In addition to that, they would also be able to network with the wedding venue owners or wedding venue managers, because obviously one of them had to be on site to let us in and out, and for just, insurance supervisory purposes anyway. So it was a really good opportunity for them to get to network with the wedding venue owner and potentially get on their preferred vendors list. So I just thought this idea was like, knock it out of the park. It made so much sense for the vendor. It made so much sense for the wedding venue. Like they were getting like quality people that were willing to invest in their own brand and therefore, represent them well when they were on their preferred vendors list for brides. Anyway, all of that to say, January, we had our first trial run. So I ate the cost for January's sessions, and I want to say it was 6 wedding vendors, a baker, a fellow photographer, hair and makeup artist. I'm trying to remember everybody now. And that was like 5+ years ago. I was able to fill the slots for free. On location day, they were actually getting their hair and makeup done as well. So I footed the cost for that just as a proof of concept to show people that, this was beneficial to them and be able to explain it to them and give them a really awesome client experience. So like when they showed up, they had a welcome packet waiting for them. We had food waiting, food and refreshments waiting for them. And it was just a really great atmosphere. And so I thought for sure that those 5, or I think it was 5 or 6, that were part of that free trial would sign up for the service. Whether it was monthly or quarterly, I was sure that I was going to have takers. And I didn't. So February, I had 2 people. I'm trying to remember really, really hard whether either of those 2 that showed up in February paid me, but I don't think they did. And then March 2020, COVID hit, and I took it as a sign that it just was not meant to be. I ran my beta program in January, didn't have any takers for February really, and then March hit and shut everything down for an undisclosed amount of time, or undetermined amount of time. So that was what I felt was my first big business failure. I started Be Your Brand, did a lot of research, did a lot of outreach to wedding venues, did a lot of things for free, and I saw 0 return on it. So that is what it is. Learned a lot of lessons. Actually, I did make a lot of connections, and I still talk to many of those wedding vendors still today, but those relationships had been, formulated prior to Be Your Brand. So yeah, that was my first business failure.
6 years ago, I opened the door to my first guest on Airbnb. I didn't know then just how much it would change our lives. Since then, I've hosted hundreds of guests, welcomed people from all over the world across multiple states, and maintained Superhost status every single quarter. But more than the 5-star reviews, it's what this extra income has allowed us to do. Family trips, breathing room in our finances, and the freedom to build a life on our terms. Hosting on Airbnb has created a steady revenue stream that fits into our schedule and our lives. Whether it's a single-family home, a guest house that you rarely use, or even a room in your home, Airbnb helps you turn that space into opportunity. If you've been thinking about entering the world of Airbnbs or short-term rentals, I would love to chat. My DMs are always open, but if you're ready to host, you can use my link to get started. You can find it in today's show notes, or you can go to www.brandandmarket.co/Airbnb for more information. Happy hosting!
On the heels of that business failure, when everybody during the COVID phase of 2020 the service providers were turning to online education to be able to sell digital products to supplement the lack of income, especially in the wedding world, because everything came to a screeching halt. That's when I created an online course. It was an online course with 9 modules specifically for beginning and aspiring photographers in years pre-launch of their business to years 1 or 2. And it was called the Photography Framework. It had literally everything in there from systems to building your portfolio, to marketing, to how to manage your equipment. It was a behemoth of a course. I remember working through each and every single module. I went and did let me back up first. I purchased a course to learn how to sell courses. That course was by Amy Porterfield called the Digital Course Academy. And that's actually one of the best online courses I've ever taken. So if you are thinking about doing something digital course related where you want to run a webinar to market it, have an open cart, closed cart date, definitely recommend that course. I'll link that in the show notes. I think she opens it periodically. It's not an evergreen course. After I took that course, I sat down and planned everything meticulously, every single module, every single PDF deliverable, every single video that I was going to like script that I had to read, right? And then one of my previous brides actually was starting her own videography business, and I paid her close to $6,000 to record this entire course. So I had paid, I think it was around right at $2,000 for the DCA, Digital Course Academy, $6,000 for recording that course. Like, not mad at her at all about that. Like, she did a fantastic job, brought her whole setup, had like the teleprompter and everything for me to like read the scripts off of as we were recording. Class act, super like thankful for her. It was just like a very large price tag for an investment, that ultimately I did not really pursue. I had to pay Shopify to be able to host the course. And that was after I decided that Kajabi wasn't for me. Kajabi was like $200 a month, and I had that running for a couple months. So all in all, I was out almost $10,000. And I went to go launch this thing, and it was right before our second son was born. I believe I launched in August, and he was born in September, mid-September. So I was going to have like a very specific open cart, closed cart date, because that's the way that Amy had taught it in her course. So I had it, you could either buy the full course, all 9 or 10 modules, or you could buy individual modules if there were specific things that you needed to work on. So I was trying to, make it as accessible for anyone that wanted to purchase it. And I sold maybe like 4 products, one of which was a full course. And then I think 3 individual modules. So total, I made less than $1,000 for that launch, and I was almost $10,000 into it. And that really like took the wind out of my sails. And honestly, I probably could have continued to push that. I probably should have pursued that a little bit more to get a little bit more on that return on that investment. And I still have the course and the, everything that could go into it to sell it again. I even tried to like just sell the digital products, because the whole reason that I got into the digital course space, well, A, was because of COVID, and we were trying to supplement income from loss of wedding photography income, but also because it's preached to you that it's a passive income. And there's absolutely nothing passive about that process at all. From the planning of the course to the recording of the course to the whole learning curve of setting up how to sell digital products. And that was the easy part. The hard part was actually marketing the thing itself, especially when I had grown a social media following that was looking for photography services, not a social media following that was a photographer looking to build their business. So there was just a whole mismatch of messaging and stuff. Like, it was just a whole thing. So that's what I would consider my second business failure. And then the big behemoth in 2021, when we purchased the wedding venue, or the property in Kentucky that we wanted to be a wedding venue. And I've talked about this, I think, until I'm blue in the face. I will link the full episode down in the show notes. I think I've linked that episode like 16 times, and I only have like 50 episodes here, but it's been a big part of our story. And we purchased that with the help of family members for $1.5 million. And it was 90 acres with 3 structures on it. The first one was a 6,000 square foot main house. Second one was about 1,000 square foot carriage house or guest house. And then the last one was a 5,000 square foot metal shop. The intent for that property was to create a luxury wedding venue where the bride and groom could spend their, have the honeymoon suite over the guest house. And then either family of the bride or bridal party stays in the main house. So it was going to be a full wedding weekend venue where you checked in Thursday or Friday, had your rehearsal, your getting ready photos, your ceremony, reception, and even a Sunday brunch if you'd like it on the way out. Like, full, immersive, all-inclusive experience. We ran into a lot of issues with the county and with our neighbors who did not want the wedding venue to be there. The county didn't care, but the neighbors did. And the neighbors made that very clear to the county. And then the county decided to put 18 restrictions on the permit that we got for the wedding venue. So all of that to say, the idea that I had in my head, the luxury wedding venue, that I thought we had plenty of space for was no longer going to be happening because we had neighbors that would run their four-wheelers up and down the neighboring driveways. We would have them blasting music from the property line. We would have had them, I am sure, complaining about every little thing that could potentially be in violation of our permit. Not that we were intending to violate it. However, there were 18 restrictions, and even the most perfect human might not be able to abide by 18 things at one time while also trying to put on a luxury event. That property, needless to say, never became a wedding venue. We pivoted and made that into a short-term rental. It runs as an Airbnb now and has for almost 3 years. And the neighbors have chilled out quite a bit, so I'm grateful for that. The time period between when we purchased that property and my dreams were so big. I had a 10-year plan. I was planning on, we were going to build a house on the property and make that our forever home. We were going to raise our kids there. We were going to continue to buy other smaller properties to create, more Airbnbs. We had even talked about like creating a micro distillery so that our couples could pick their barrel, that only their guests would be able to have that type of bourbon at their event. And we were going to make it a really exclusive and fun, one-of-a-kind experience. And so the time period from when the issues with the county and the zoning board and the neighbors started to the time where we decided this isn't going to work, it was a tumultuous time. Like, it was very emotional. I still feel like I'm processing it, even though we are a few years removed now. Yeah, that transition in mindset of like, this is not going to happen. And I had to call my family member that helped us purchase that property and tell her that, knowing that like that was that much money on the line to say that this isn't going to work out. I just had the most immense amount of guilt and just, feeling like that big ol' effort, feeling like a failure, that I had not done enough research, that I had not been prepared enough, that I was naive, who am I to think that I could pull something of this scale off? Like, there were a lot of, I hate the word, like mindset. There were a lot of mindset issues that still stem from that. And that is definitely what I would consider my biggest business failure. And if we are really going to dive into it, when we decided that we were probably going to sell that property, we were trying to avoid having to pay high commission rates again because we had just bought the property. And so I actually went and got my real estate license in Kentucky, and I was going to be the listing agent for that property. Well, that was also another rude awakening because I knew a lot about properties in the area, but I didn't know much about being a listing agent. And so I had learned very quickly that in order to be a real estate agent, I had to have a brokerage that would allow me to hang my license and be a practicing realtor in the state of Kentucky. And so once I, found a person that was willing to just let me sell my own house, which was a challenge in and of itself, I didn't have much guidance on how to market said property, what the strategies were to actually be able to attract buyers, especially buyers from out of town, because not many people in the geographical area that we were in would be able to afford the 90-acre property. And so I knew that the buyer had to be coming from somewhere outside Chicago, California, like Louisville, maybe. We had 2 inquiries. We had one showing that they said they were interested. And of course, that showing fell on a weekend when we had guests and we weren't able to show the property. Tried to follow up with them, never heard anything from them. Ultimately, obviously, we still own the property today, so it never sold. And then the broker that was willing to allow me to hang my license no longer is a broker anymore. So I was either going to have to let my license expire or find someone else so that we could relist. And at that point, I just felt so discouraged that I don't know what I'm doing anyway. I'm not doing justice to this property. I'm not doing anything to sell it. So why would I go through the trouble of trying to find a new broker? And At this point, we are still running the property as an Airbnb very successfully, might I add. That part is a success, but isn't it funny that like you tend to focus on the failures instead of the successes? So we still own that property, and it's not been sold since we purchased it in 2021. But I know this episode, it feels a little bit all over the place, but like I said, the conjunction of the conversations that I've had with my business and sales coach, along with the experience that we had at the music festival, it inspired me to be real with you guys. And I don't ever want you to feel like you are alone if you are experiencing that dirty F word in your business or in your life. And like I said, the intent of this episode is not to sell you anything. It's not to show like my credibility or expertise. It's literally just to be encouraging that you're not alone. If you've had a service offering flop, a digital course flop, a $1.5 million flop, like I'm there with you. I understand you. And if you ever want to have a conversation about it, then please just slide into my DMs on Instagram at brandandmarket.co. I would love to talk through it with you. And like I said, when you're feeling down on the dumps, that it's the 501st song that you write that's going to be the one that changes your life. So let's write our 501st song together. Let's do it. You just completed another episode of the Brand and Market Podcast. If you found this helpful, please rate, review, and subscribe to help others find this show and so that you never miss an episode. Don't forget to take a look at the show notes for all the resources mentioned today. See you next Wednesday, and as always, I'm here cheering you on as you build your dream brand and business.